Lu Tao and his group gazed at the young man who appeared in midair, sensing the murderous aura emanating from him. Their expressions subtly shifted. The thought of confronting these Dao sect disciples had already made them uneasy. After all, no matter how bold they were, the Dao sect remained one of the 8 great super sects of the Eastern Mystery region. To them, it was an enormous entity they couldn't afford to provoke. Sure, they might not fear anything, but if the Dao sect's wrath was unleashed, it would be something they couldn't endure. So, from the beginning, none of them dared to entertain the idea of killing and seizing treasures. At most, they had hoped that their greedy provocations would make these young Dao sect disciples apprehensive enough to allow them to get a share of the spoils. However, they hadn't expected that these disciples, whom they viewed as green and inexperienced, would turn out to be more ruthless than the next. Earlier, EngSubs and the others were at least willing to talk things through, but this guy who just appeared, he had simply thrown down a cold ultimatum. "Kid, you're far too arrogant." Lu Tao sneered. He and the others were much older than Lin Dong and had made some name for themselves over the years, but now being so ruthlessly mocked by Lin Dong had ignited a bit of anger. However, Lin Dong ignored his sneer completely. After 10 seconds passed, he slowly raised his eyes, which brimmed with killing intent, and said, "Your time is up." The moment his words fell, a streak of black light shot over from behind him, transforming into a demon corpse that stood by his side. A demon corpse? When the demon corpse appeared, shocked murmurs erupted throughout the crowd. Even EngSubs and Wang Yin stared in astonishment at the black figure standing behind Lin Dong. They couldn't help but glance at the demon corpse trapped in the light array, their breathing growing heavier. It was hard for them to believe that not only had Lin Dong dealt with the demon corpse that was chasing them, but he had also taken control of it. Lu Tao and his group stared in horror at the demon corpse standing behind Lin Dong, and they all involuntarily took a step back, sucking in a breath of cold air. "Hee brother, no need to be so hasty. We were just passing by." Lu Tao and the others exchanged glances, their expressions changing in an instant. They hurriedly spoke up, awkwardly retreating, all the while cursing inwardly. These super sects were terrifying. Just their younger disciples were already this formidable. Get lost. Lin Dong, watching their pale faces, had no interest in dragging this out. His eyes turned cold as he spat out the command. Upon hearing Lin Dong's cold rebuke, Lu Tao and his group didn't dare show any more anger. They nodded hastily, then quickly fled with their subordinates. They weren't fools. After seeing the current situation, any hope of getting a share of the treasure had evaporated. If they angered this obviously dangerous young man, they would likely suffer heavy casualties. EngSubs and the others couldn't help but feel a bit speechless as they watched these shameless individuals, who had been pestering them moments before, now scurry away in fear. "Are you all right?" After scaring them off, Lin Dong turned around, the murderous aura on his face slowly dissipating. He smiled at EngSubs and the others. "We're fine. Just a bit unlucky to run into those annoying people. They aren't easy to come by, but their strength isn't bad. 4 peak 9th Nirvana stage warriors," EngSubs said helplessly. "They're old foxes from the Eastern Mystery region, so it's not surprising they have that kind of strength," Lin Dong laughed. After all, those 4 were middle-aged and had been cultivating for many years, so it wasn't too surprising they had reached this level. "Lin Dong, your demon corpse, did you turn it into a puppet?" Wang Yin asked, staring curiously at the demon corpse behind Lin Dong. "I'm controlling it with my essence spirit," Lin Dong replied with a smile. Upon hearing this, both EngSubs and Wang Yin's expressions changed slightly. They were clearly aware of the risks associated with this type of control, but seeing Lin Dong's calm demeanor, they understood that he must have a way to mitigate those risks. "Sister, haven't you dealt with that demon corpse yet?" Huan approached, looking at the demon corpse still raging inside the light array. Its defense is terrifying. We can trap it, but we can't destroy it," EngSubs said with a wry smile. "Let the formation down." "I'll handle it," Lin Dong offered with a smile. Having dealt with one before, he now knew how to take care of these high-defense demon corpses. Hearing this, EngSubs hesitated briefly before nodding. Since Lindong had managed to deal with one demon corpse, taking care of the second shouldn't be too difficult. With a wave of her hand, the Dao Sect disciples in the sky quickly retracted their primordial energy, and the light array trapping the demon corpse disappeared. Roar! As soon as the light array dissipated, the red in the demon corpse's eyes intensified, and its body shot out like a black streak, charging toward the Dao Sect disciples. Boom! However, just as it moved, the demon corpse behind Lin Dong also shot forward like a cannonball, colliding heavily with the other one. Both of them crashed into the ground, creating a massive crater. The two demon corpses tumbled across the ground, cracking it open wherever they rolled. The immense power on display made many Dao Sect disciples gasp in awe. Lin Dong glanced down at the two demon corpses tangled on the ground. With a twist of his palm, a light array appeared. In the next instant, his figure shot downward, appearing in front of the demon corpse in a flash. His palm curved, and he struck the demon corpse's abdomen, right at its energy core. Sizzle! The demon corpse's tough, shriveled skin immediately began to darken and decay. With a surge of force from Lindong's palm, the powerful defense that had frustrated EngSubs and the others was pierced through, and Lindong's hand shot forward, grasping the white energy core from the demon corpse's abdomen. Is it over? In midair, EngSubs, Wang Yin, and all the Dao Sect disciples stared wide-eyed at the scene. For a moment, they all exchanged stunned glances. It was hard to believe that the demon corpse, which had withstood all their attacks, had been so easily taken down by Lin Dong. EngSubs and Wang Yin descended, still looking shocked. They glanced at the white energy core in Lin Dong's hand and then at his palm, clearly deep in thought. It seemed Lin Dong had used some method to break through the demon corpse's terrifying defenses. Without those defenses, the demon corpse was like a crab without its claws. Its combat strength greatly reduced. Senior sister Xiao, senior brother Wang Yin, both of you have already reached the peak of the 9th Nirvana stage. This life mystique bone pill will be more useful to you. Lin Dong tossed the white energy core to EngSubs, then handed the life mystique bone pill he had just obtained to Wang Yin. Although the life mystique bone pill would also benefit Lin Dong, it would not be as effective for him as it would be for EngSubs and Wang Yin. If they were fortunate enough, this pill might help them touch the threshold of the life mystique stage, which would significantly enhance their combat strength. Such an improvement would undoubtedly be a great help when they encountered members of the Yuan sect later on. EngSubs and Wang Yin were momentarily taken aback when they received the life mystique bone pill, and then they hesitated. You did the most work subduing the demon corpse. I don't need it, EngSubs said. Just give me this thing instead, Lin Dong replied with a smile, patting the second demon corpse he had subdued. Although his essence spirit could only control one demon corpse at a time, keeping an extra one in reserve wasn't a bad idea. Seeing his insistence, EngSubs and Wang Yin finally nodded and put away the life mystique bone pill. Sister Xiao, I bought this copper furnace in Alien Demon City a few days ago, and I found this thing inside. It seems to be an ancient map. Can you tell where it points to within the alien demon region? Lin Dong asked, storing the demon corpse in his cosmic bag before releasing a surge of spiritual energy. The energy formed a light map in front of them. An ancient map? EngSubs and Wang Yin were slightly startled and quickly focused their attention on the map. However, their expressions soon turned to surprise. Junior brother Lin Dong, is this ancient map possibly pointing to the ancient vault of heaven burning? EngSubs asked. Now it was Lin Dong's turn to be surprised. He hadn't mentioned the name of the vault, yet EngSubs seemed to know about it. Does senior sister Xiao know about the ancient vault of heaven burning? Lin Dong felt a tinge of unease. He had originally thought that no one knew about this thing, so how could? There are many ancient vaults in the alien demon region, and the ancient vault of heaven burning is one of the most famous. As for this map, it's not all that valuable, since many people already know the vault's location. Hearing this, Lin Dong's face darkened. Was what he considered a treasure nothing more than a worthless item? However, knowing the location is one thing. No one has been able to successfully open the ancient vault of heaven burning so far. Furthermore, the Yuan sect has had its eyes on the vault for many years. This time, they will undoubtedly make another attempt. After so many failures, they might now have a way to open it. Open the ancient vault of heaven burning? Lin Dong frowned, his thoughts racing. Suddenly, he remembered the mysterious light plate that had melted out of his copper furnace. Let's head to the ancient vault of heaven burning as well. EngSubs and the others were momentarily stunned when they heard Lin Dong say this after a brief silence. The ancient vault of heaven burning is one of the most famous vaults in the alien demon region. Over the years, many super sects have coveted it. During this sect competition, the vault will undoubtedly be the most attractive place. If we go there, we'll likely run into the Yuan sect, EngSubs pondered aloud. So be it. It's bound to happen sooner or later. Besides, if they are also interested in the ancient vault of heaven burning, they won't target us until they've obtained it, Lin Dong said with a faint smile. By the way, aren't there a lot of ancient vaults in the alien demon region? Have any powerful figures from the super sects tried to explore them? Lin Dong suddenly thought of something. With the strength of someone like EngSubs or the head of the Yuan sect, they should be able to force their way into the vault, no matter how strong the seals were. Strong experts of that level treat the alien demon region as forbidden territory. Not only would the demonic energy here react violently to their presence, but the ancient formations sealing this place would also reject them, EngSubs explained. The weaker a person is, the less they are repelled by this place. That's the main reason why the powerful figures from the super sects haven't entered the alien demon region. I see. So that's the reason, Lin Dong said, suddenly enlightened. Senior Sister Xiao, do you think we should go to the ancient vault of heaven burning? Lin Dong asked again. After all, EngSubs was the leader, and they needed her approval before taking action. If you've decided to go to the vault, then we'll follow your lead. But you should be prepared. If we run into the Yuan sect, the three minor kings won't be as easy to deal with as those other guys, EngSubs said after some thought, nodding slightly as she gazed at Lin Dong. Don't worry, Senior Sister Xiao. If the Yuan sect dares to make a move, I can't guarantee the safety of every Dao sect disciple, but at least 2 of the 3 minor kings will die. Lin Dong said softly. Though his outward strength appeared to fall short compared to the 3 minor kings, if they forced him into a life-and-death struggle where he had to use all his means, he was confident he could take down 2 of them. As Lin Dong said this, everyone could see a sudden flash of ruthlessness in his expression. While it sent chills down their spines, it also stirred a sense of excitement. They knew that Lin Dong wasn't one to make empty threats. If he dared say it, he must have the strength to back it up. Senior brother Lin Dong, don't worry. If it comes to a bloody battle, we'll fight to the end. If the Yuan sect wants to trample over the Dao sect, we'll make sure to break their legs. One of the Dao sect disciples shouted, his face flushed with excitement. Yeah, I've had enough of those arrogant guys. EngSubs couldn't help but smile wryly at the excited expressions of the Dao sect disciples around her. Shaking her head, she said softly, in that case, let's move out immediately. If I'm right, the Yuan sect disciples will be heading straight for the ancient vault of heaven burning as soon as they enter the alien demon region. So we need to speed up. Got it. Lin Dong nodded. Let's go. With that, EngSubs' figure turned into a streak of light, shooting off into the distance. Behind her, Lin Dong, Wang Yin, Huan, and the other Dao sect disciples quickly followed, transforming into a stream of rainbow light as they sped toward the depths of the wilderness. The ancient vault of heaven burning was located in the central region of the alien demon region, a considerable distance from its outer edges. Even with Lin Dong's group traveling at full speed, it would take nearly 10 days to reach their destination. Because they were already trailing the Yuan sect, the Dao sect disciples pushed on through the night, almost non-stop. However, despite their haste, their progress wasn't as fast as they had hoped, mainly due to the difficult demonic creatures they encountered along the way. The one relief for Lin Dong and the others was that none of the creatures they met were as troublesome as the demon corpse. Otherwise, even with Lin Dong's specialized methods for dealing with them, the ordinary Dao sect disciples would have struggled. Moreover, through their relentless travel and constant battles with the demonic creatures, the coordination and teamwork among the Dao sect disciples had improved significantly. They no longer exhibited the panic and disarray of their earlier skirmishes, clearly gaining valuable experience through these real-life fights. During their journey, Lin Dong's group encountered numerous treasure hunters who had entered the alien demon region. Although many of these individuals were strong, none dared to cause trouble for them like Lu Tao's group had. Not everyone was as foolish as Lu Tao, and the prestige of the Dao sect was enough to deter most people. In addition to the treasure hunters, they also came across disciples from other sects that had a certain reputation in the Eastern Mystery region. While these sects weren't as powerful as the Dao sect, they still ranked among the super sections. Although there were some minor clashes due to various reasons, no serious fights broke out, as both sides showed a degree of restraint. As the Dao sect group pressed on, 10 days swiftly passed. After enduring numerous difficult battles, they finally reached the central region of the alien demon region. Earth Hall disciples form a defensive array. Grand Hall disciples engage the remaining demon beasts. Heaven Hall and Wild Hall disciples attack. In a field of shattered rocks, hundreds of figures hovered in the air, their formation precise and coordinated. Their actions displayed a high degree of harmony, and a woman in the distance calmly directed the scene. Boom, boom. Terrifying waves of energy rippled across the sky. A torrent of fierce attacks rained down on the dozen or so enormous, pitch-black demon beasts trapped in a light array below. The sheer force of the combined attacks tore through the creatures, sending blood splattering everywhere. Suspended in midair, Lin Dong and several others watched the intense battle below. Lin Dong couldn't help but nod slightly in approval. These Dao sect disciples had already displayed decent coordination, but after 10 days of practical combat, their teamwork had transformed into formidable battle readiness. The battle below soon ended. Some disciples descended to clean up the battlefield, while others sat down on the ground to quickly recover their expended primordial energy. At that moment, EngSubs approached from nearby, glancing at Lin Dong and the others before looking toward the dark sky to the north. In half a day, we'll reach the region where the ancient vault of heaven burning is located. Oh, so we're almost there? Lin Dong's eyes narrowed as he responded. No wonder there are more and more people showing up around here. Yes, the ancient vault of heaven burning is extremely enticing. Even the 8 super sects will send people from all directions, along with many other factions. They'll all gather outside the vault, EngSubs explained with a nod. In a way, this is where the real sect competition will begin. So, even the other super sects will come? Lin Dong smiled faintly and raised his gaze toward the distant dark sky. Somewhere far off, it felt as though a burning intensity was quietly stirring. After the calm of the previous days, things were about to get turbulent. I'm looking forward to it. After half an hour of meditation to recover, the Dao sect disciples rose once again without any unnecessary words. The large group transformed into streaks of rainbow light, hurtling towards the northern sky. As the dark land flew past beneath them, the ground began to change color after half a day's flight. The darkness gradually lightened, replaced by a deep crimson hue, as if the earth itself was ablaze. This sight invigorated everyone. They knew they were approaching the ancient vault of heaven burning. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Large numbers of figures soared over a black mountain range and eventually came to a stop in midair, their gazes filled with anticipation as they looked ahead. Lin Dong also halted and raised his head. In front of them lay an unimaginably vast, crimson basin. From above, the basin looked like an enormous handprint, as if a deity had pressed their palm into the earth, leaving an indelible mark. At that moment, countless figures could be seen rushing through the basin, their movements creating a symphony of wind-splitting sounds. As far as the eye could see, the area was packed with people, an unending sea of bodies. It seemed that the majority of those who had entered the alien demon region had gathered here. The allure of the ancient vault of heaven burning truly lived up to its reputation. It looks like most of the people who entered the alien demon region are here, EngSubs remarked, her eyes glimmering with surprise as she looked at the dense crowd swarming through the vast basin. In previous sect competitions, there were plenty of people, but not on this scale. It seems word got out that the Yuan sect might have a way to open the vault, and now everyone wants a share of the loot. Lin Dong nodded slightly, feeling a bit surprised. He wasn't sure what the mysterious light plate he had found in the copper furnace was for, but it was likely related to the ancient vault of heaven burning. Could the Yuan sect have obtained something similar? Let's head over. EngSubs' gaze locked onto the center of the crimson basin, and with that, her figure shot forward. Lindong and the others quickly followed suit. As they drew closer to the central area, Lindong and the others began to sense the presence of several powerful and concealed auras. It seemed this place was indeed a den of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Even among those present, there was no shortage of ninth Nirvana stage experts. The other super sects are here, as expected. Lindong's gaze swept across the central region, where he could see several large contingents of people. These were disciples from the other super sects, and even members of the Nine Heavens Taiching Palace were among them. As Lindong and his large group of Dao sect disciples appeared, many eyes immediately turned in their direction. Upon seeing who had arrived, some of those present couldn't help but reveal expressions of amusement, as if they were expecting a good show. Everyone knew that the Yuan sect would inevitably appear at the ancient vault of heaven burning. Many had expected the Dao sect disciples, who had a deep grudge against the Yuan sect, to avoid this area. However, it was clear now that they had no intention of doing so. As a result, it was almost certain that the Dao sect disciples would clash with the Yuan sect. A dramatic confrontation seemed inevitable. It's brother Lindong. In the Nine Heavens Taiching Palace area, Su Ro's face lit up with joy as she spotted the Dao sect disciples flying in from the distance. The Dao sect disciples have come too. Ling Qingzhu also looked in their direction, her brows furrowing slightly before her gaze shifted to the most central part of the basin. There, a large group of people sat quietly, exuding a faint but intimidating aura. Those were the disciples of the Yuan sect. What are they thinking? Don't they realize the Yuan sect will be here too? And they're still swaggering in like this? Do they really think Yuan Song and the others are pushovers? Behind Ling Qingzhu stood a handsome man named Wu Kun, one of the most outstanding young talents of the Nine Heavens Taiching Palace. He had witnessed the confrontation between Lindong and Lei Qian in the treasure hunting zone, and had also seen the interaction between Lindong and Ling Qingzhu afterward. Although her demeanor had remained calm and indifferent as usual, having known Ling Qingzhu for many years, Wu Kun had sensed some subtle changes in her emotions. These fluctuations in Ling Qingzhu's normally serene state made Wu Kun feel slightly uncomfortable, as he was well aware that such emotions were exceedingly rare for her. Brother Lindong is never a reckless person. Whatever he does, he has his reasons. Since he dared to bring the Dao sect disciples here, he surely isn't afraid of the Yuan sect's bullying. Su Ro couldn't help but retort when Wu Kun's voice fell. Back in the ancient battleground, every opponent Lindong had faced was far stronger than her or anyone around him. Many onlookers had ridiculed him, much like they were doing now. Yet each time, that young man, who hailed from a mere lower dynasty, would always emerge with a smile, while behind him rose a suffocating aura of bloodshed. Even though Su Ro had now joined the Nine Heavens Taiching Palace, in her heart, she still believed that the slender figure who had led her and her brother out of Myriad Elephant City, standing tall atop 100 Dynasties Mountain, was the most unshakable person in this world. She stubbornly believed that no one could ever truly defeat that figure. Do you really think he can stand up to the three minor kings of the Yuan sect? Wu Kun smirked faintly. He had witnessed the standoff between Lindong and Lei Qian the other day. Although Lindong had forced Lei Qian to retreat in embarrassment, that was only because Lei Qian had talked big and backed himself into a corner. If the two had truly fought head-on, Wu Kun didn't believe that Lindong could match Lei Qian. Su Ro hesitated for a moment. She was no longer the timid girl she once was, and she knew full well how formidable the three minor kings of the Yuan sect were. However, after a brief pause, she still nodded resolutely and said, "Brother Lindong won't be afraid of them." Perhaps. Wu Kun shrugged non-committally. With his status in the Nine Heavens Taiching Palace, few disciples dared to argue with him. But Su Ro was clearly an exception. Although she had only joined the palace a year ago, her progress had been nothing short of terrifying. Wu Kun also knew that if she ever went berserk, only Ling Qingzhu among the younger generation could possibly subdue her. Ling Qingzhu quietly listened to their debate, surprised at the extent of Su Ro's admiration for Lin Dong. She had learned a bit about this little junior sister, who had earned a rising reputation within the Nine Heavens Taiching Palace. When she first arrived, Su Ro had seemed rather gentle and timid, but it was clear she had a deep inner resolve. While Su Ro respected Ling Qingzhu greatly, it was nowhere near the level of nearly blind devotion she showed toward Lin Dong. Of course, Ling Qingzhu wasn't aware of what had happened during the 100 Dynasty War. She couldn't understand how two siblings, who had been hunted to the point of not even daring to enter Myriad Elephant City, had found salvation that night by the campfire when they encountered a slender young man with a faint, kind smile. To Su Ro and her brother, that youth had been a savior from despair. As countless eyes gathered, the Dao sect disciples descended slowly into the central area. After a brief scan of their surroundings, their gazes turned almost simultaneously toward the distant front, where the Yuan sect disciples were stationed. As expected, we've run into them. Lin Dong's eyes narrowed slightly, showing no surprise, as if he had already anticipated this moment. EngSubs made a hand gesture, and the Dao sect disciples immediately sat down to meditate and restore their energy. However, their eyes were filled with caution, and their positions were well ordered. After 10 days of battle, they had clearly become much more disciplined. If anything happened, they could quickly form a formation to defend themselves. Stay on guard, Lin Dong whispered to Ing Huan beside him. Ing Huan nodded. She opened her delicate hand, and a verdant guqin appeared in her palm. Her expression, too, was one of heightened vigilance. Not long after Lin Dong and the others settled down, the sound of wind tearing through the air suddenly reached them. Lin Dong looked up, startled, because the person approaching was none other than Xue Ling from the Sword Sect, whom they had met earlier. Seeing him, Lin Dong and his group furrowed their brows. Could it be that this guy was holding a grudge over what happened last time? Heh, I didn't expect you guys to escape from the demon corpse's pursuit. You've got some skills, Xue Ling landed from midair, his gaze filled with surprise as he looked at Lin Dong's group with a grin. Seeing that Xue Ling wasn't here to cause trouble, Lin Dong's expression softened slightly, and he smiled back. Brother Xue, your abilities aren't too shabby either. Those two demon corpses weren't easy to deal with. Sigh, we didn't take care of them. After being chased for so long, we had no choice but to lead them to a crowded place and then slip away unnoticed. Xue Ling said helplessly. Lin Dong and the others exchanged glances at this, taken aback. This guy had been ruthless enough to direct the danger toward others when he couldn't handle it himself. The poor souls who had been lured into dealing with the demon corpses. Lin Dong wondered if they had managed to deal with them in the end. But you guys sure are bold, knowing the Yuan sect is here and still coming over. Xue Ling glanced toward the Yuan sect's direction and then said, considering you were willing to split the life mystique bone pill with us last time, I'll give you a friendly warning. The Yuan sect will likely clear the area soon. If things get tough, it might be better to avoid confrontation. No need to repeat what happened at the last sect competition. Thanks. Lin Dong cupped his hands in gratitude and smiled. Xue Ling waved his hand dismissively and said no more. He then led the other Sword Sect disciples back to their area. Not long after Xue Ling left, Lin Dong's eyes suddenly narrowed as he noticed two figures stepping out from the Yuan sect's area. These two headed toward disciples from two other factions, which, while not part of the 8 super sects, were still quite powerful in their own right. Shortly after the two made their approach, the groups of disciples they visited stood up and, under the watchful eyes of countless onlookers, began making their way toward the Dao sect's area. Their movements made it clear that their intentions were far from friendly. Using others to do their dirty work, are they? Lin Dong's eyelids lowered slightly, and a cold glint flickered in his eyes. Those are disciples of Ghost Blade Sect and Fire Cloud Sect. Both are quite well known in the Eastern Mystery region, and though they're not officially subordinate to the Yuan sect, they've always been closely associated. They usually follow the Yuan sect's lead, EngSubs explained with a dark look as she glanced at Lin Dong. Lin Dong nodded slightly, then raised his head, watching as the two groups drew nearer. Eventually, they stopped not far from the Dao sect's position, under the gaze of the many onlookers. At the forefront of the Ghost Blade sect disciples, a man dressed in black stepped forward. A chilling, Sharp aura emanated from him, clearly marking him as a powerful practitioner of the ninth nirvana stage. At the same time, another man in red robes walked out from the Fire Cloud sect group. His face was adorned with a faint smile, and as he moved, a wave of fiery energy spread out around him. I am Mengduan of the Ghost Blade sect. And I am Yanghua of the Fire Cloud sect. The two of them clasped their fists and smiled toward Lin Dong and the others, though their smiles held not a shred of warmth. Is there something you need? Lin Dong's expression remained calm as he asked casually. Hee, I think you should already know why we're here. Yanghua of Fire Cloud sect responded with a faint smile, not bothering with pretense. He got straight to the point. Brother Yuan Song doesn't want to see you here, so he sent us to deliver the message. If you have any issues, settle them at the final location. Brother Yuan Song is actually being merciful by not taking action now. I'd say, if you leave now and head straight to the final location, you might just get out of the alien demon region in one piece, sparing yourselves some unnecessary harm. Ming Duan of Ghost Blade sect added with a grin. This should be considered a good thing for you. It's better to avoid what happened at the last sect competition, he continued. Hearing these two casually throwing out such words, all of the Dao sect disciples' faces darkened. The arrogance of the Yuan sect was truly outrageous, not only having the gall to say such things, but not even bothering to show up themselves. Instead, they sent others to deliver the message, a blatant show of contempt that seemed to have reached its peak. Even EngSubs' face flushed with anger, and nearby, Wang Yan's eyes were filled with cold fury. He was clearly struggling to suppress his rage, and it was obvious that, without restraint, he might have already exploded in anger. Thanks for delivering the message. However, while the other Dao sect disciples were brimming with indignation, Lin Dong remained calm. Instead of showing any sign of anger, he even smiled as he spoke. Hearing Lin Dong's response, Yanghua and Meng Duan smiled as well. It seemed this guy knew his place. Around them, many onlookers, who had been watching closely, appeared surprised by Lin Dong's reaction, some even showing a hint of disdain. But, just as Yanghua and Meng Duan thought the Dao sect disciples would back down, Lin Dong's tone suddenly changed. The smile on his face was instantly replaced with a chilling expression. Are those idiots without feet or mouths of their own? Lin Dong's cold, cutting voice echoed loudly, causing Yanghua and Meng Duan's smug smiles to freeze on their faces. His words sent ripples of surprise through the surrounding crowd. Boy, don't think you can talk your way out of this without facing consequences you can't afford. Yanghua's face darkened as his fury surged. Lin Dong's taunts had clearly angered him. Trash like you doesn't even have the right to flaunt yourselves in front of us Dao sect disciples. Lin Dong's eyes were cold, as sharp as blades. Get lost. You've got some nerve. Yanghua and Meng Duan finally lost their tempers. With a furious step forward, a surge of powerful primordial energy erupted from their bodies, sweeping towards Lin Dong like a tidal wave. Seeing this, Lin Dong's gaze turned icy, but he made no move to defend himself. With a mere thought, a black shadow shot out from among the Dao sect disciples behind him. The speed of this shadow was astonishing, appearing before Yanghua and Meng Duan in the blink of an eye. Seeking death. Yanghua and Meng Duan sneered as they saw the ambush, and primordial energy swirled around them. Without hesitation, they unleashed their powerful strikes, directing them at the black shadow. But as their ferocious attacks collided with the black shadow, a pair of shriveled hands reached out from the darkness, meeting their strikes head-on. Boom, boom. A low, thunderous impact resounded. In the next instant, the sneers on Yanghua and Meng Duan's faces abruptly froze. Their faces flushed red, and blood spurted from their mouths as their bodies were sent flying backward, crashing into the ground with enough force to carve long trenches into the earth. Cracks spiderwebbed out from the edges of the trenches. The previously noisy battlefield fell silent for a moment, followed by a wave of shocked murmurs spreading throughout the crowd. Countless eyes locked onto the black figure that had sent two ninth Nirvana stage experts flying with a single blow. Even the most elite disciples of other sects would find such a feat difficult to achieve. All eyes focused on the black shadow. Soon, the outline of a withered, blackened face became visible. In the next moment, gasps of shock filled the air. That's a demon corpse? How does the Tao sect have a demon corpse? Are they controlling it? Impossible. Not even the myriad puppet sect can easily control a demon corpse. The Tao sect doesn't specialize in this kind of thing. How could they be able to control it? The murmurs of astonishment echoed across the sky, with many in the crowd staring at the demon corpse in disbelief. Even the disciples of the Sword sect, who had backed away earlier, were stunned by the sight. Schwelling, in particular, had initially felt a bit regretful that the Tao sect didn't take his advice and leave. However, upon seeing the demon corpse, his expression turned grave. He stared fixedly at the demon corpse for a moment before taking a deep breath. It seemed that not only had the Tao sect disciples dealt with the demon corpse that had been chasing them, but they had also somehow managed to control it with some unknown technique. Was it Lin Dong who did this? Schwelling's gaze shifted toward the slender figure standing in the distance. His pupils contracted slightly. This guy seemed to be the most deeply hidden among the Tao sect disciples, which explained why even Xiao and Wang Yin seemed to follow his lead at times. So it's a demon corpse. In the area where the myriad puppet sect disciples were gathered, those skilled in refining puppets were also watching the scene in surprise. Gueli, the gray-robed youth at the forefront, was especially focused. His eyes narrowed as he glanced at Lin Dong with a newfound hint of wariness. He understood just how difficult it was to control a demon corpse. If you don't leave now, you'll die. Amid the murmurs of the crowd, Lin Dong raised his head slightly, his gaze indifferent as he looked at the frightened disciples of Ghost Blade Sect and Fire Cloud Sect. His voice was calm but cold. Terrified by the sight of Yang Hua and Meng Duan being severely injured in just one exchange, the two sects' disciples didn't dare to linger any longer. They hurriedly lifted their injured comrades and fled in panic. As the two groups retreated in humiliation, silence once again fell over the area. The unexpected turn of events had clearly caught everyone off guard. If you've got something to say, then come out and say it yourself. Stop hiding in the shadows. It only disgraces you. In the newly quiet atmosphere, Lin Dong slowly raised his head, his gaze locking onto the Yuan sects area. His cold voice reverberated throughout the air. As his words spread, there was an immediate stir among the Yuan sect disciples. Many of their eyes gleamed with malice. Boom. After a brief moment of unrest, a hulking figure stood up, radiating murderous intent. His face twisted with malice as he turned to face Lin Dong. It was none other than Little Thunder King Lei Qian. You've got some nerve. Since you're so eager to die, I'll grant you your wish right here. Ungrateful scum. Lei Qian snarled viciously. As his voice fell, two other figures by his side slowly stood up under the gaze of the crowd. Do you really think a mere demon corpse gives you so much confidence? Dressed in blue robes, Little Yuan King Yuan Tsang looked at Lin Dong with a faint smile. In that case, I'll just destroy it. Swoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, an iron sword slid into his hand. With a casual swing, he slashed downward. Boom. As the sword descended, the very primordial energy of heaven and earth seemed to boil. A towering sword light tore through the sky, slashing down toward the demon corpse at a speed almost impossible to track with the naked eye. The range of the sword light also encompassed Lin Dong, who was standing behind it. Lin Dong squinted slightly as he watched the rapidly enlarging sword light in his vision, just about to make a move. But suddenly, his heart stirred. From the distant horizon, a surge of mighty gray light roared in, colliding heavily with the sword light. Instantly, a deafening explosion echoed across the battlefield. Chen Gui, this is between the Yuan sect and the Tao sect. Why are you interfering? As the overwhelming shockwave spread out, Yuan Tsang's eyes flickered for the first time with some emotion. A cold, harsh voice resounded in response. Chen Gui? That guy who's ranked first on the sect wanted list? Why would he be helping the Tao sect? As soon as Yuan Tsang's voice fell, a wave of astonished murmurs spread across the surroundings, with many people's faces filled with utter disbelief. Whoosh! Amidst the rising commotion, a streak of rainbow light shot over from the distant sky, transforming into two figures suspended in midair. Lin Dong's eyes carried a trace of confusion as he looked up at the two figures in the sky. Then, as his gaze fell upon one of the petite and familiar figures, his pupils instantly constricted. An expression of extreme shock, something EngShao and the others had never seen from him before, crept onto his face. Hee, brother Lin Dong. As the others stood puzzled by Lin Dong's reaction, the petite figure in the sky turned around. A delighted smile bloomed on her exceptionally delicate and beautiful face. However, just as her smile appeared, she quickly reined it in, for she noticed that the shock on Lin Dong's face wasn't turning into the joyful reunion she expected. Instead, it was replaced by a look of fury born from his extreme surprise. Qingtan, what are you doing here?